What does free mean? Free means that you are not subject to the coercion of other people. They can't use force against you or the threats of force to make you do things you don't want to do. If they can do that, then you're not free. And vice versa. It means that you can't use force against them to make them do things that they don't want to do. Laws are the use of force to govern your behavior. They're making you do what you don't want to do. That's not a free country.
Go back to the extreme examples, though. When the Emergencies Act came and I read the writing of the Emergencies Act, it gave them complete monopoly control on my house, my family, my children. If they deemed it, they could walk in and take my child away from me.
I'm playing with this idea of what you're explaining, true freedom, and I totally get what you're doing. You're ripping away all these things to try to, what does it truly mean to be free? I can do what I want when I want, and assuming we're not going to infringe upon the rights of other people. I call that being a decent human being. Let's say I have freedom, but there's also duty that comes with me. I have a duty and a responsibility that I willingly chose, which lays down what some people might define as true freedom. Out of duty and responsibility, I am not going to do whatever I want, however I want. But some people might say, well, that's not true freedom. You can't do what you want when you want.
Is there anything you can think of in the present day that governments do well?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Citizen here in Calgary, Alberta, back in studio.
Good to be back. Thank you for joining us wherever you guys are tuning in from. The show goes on.
The show does go on. I think sometimes people think when they see this shot, they think that's the name of the show.
It's not.
That is a phrase that got famous when we were at the Freedom Convoy.
That's right. It was our own
all the time when we were losing steam, losing energy, and we'd be like, the show goes on. Let's keep this up.
We should revisit that once in a while. There's a lot of new subscribers. Thank you for joining and hanging with us and subscribing. But for don't know the history of that, the show goes on was our individual mantra when we felt like quitting every day in the bitter
16-hour days and minus 35.
Tracking what was going on the ground in front of Parliament Hill. We kept saying, the show goes on. We got to keep going.
Yeah, for sure. So, and essentially the reason we got on our wall is because we believe we have to continue this conversation always. As laws, as things that we are participating in as citizens, whether we know it or not, we play a part in it. And so we try to keep the things in the forefront so that we as citizens can communicate, talk, know what's happening, know what we're voting for, and just bring
the national conversation
top.
is important, and the national conversation is made up by millions of small conversations of the proverbial dining room conversation. So we try to harvest that here about different things that are relevant to Canada, also obviously throughout the world. But lots of things Canada's facing right now. That's nothing new. There's always issues, especially when you're dealing with things of national interest, also when geopolitics are involved. Lots of things I want to get to today, and we'll see if we do get to them all. We very rarely do. When we say off the top we were going to hit these topics. But we do want to talk a bit about the notwithstanding clause. We got issues coming on with C9, right, which is regarding freedom of speech. I want to discuss freedom of speech between Canada, U.S. What is real freedom of speech? I'm not sure if you saw, but Prime Minister Mark Carney recently put out, especially an announcement talking about using, again, language to protect children and families from hate speech. But again, very slippery slope. We want to talk about what does that mean. There are a couple other things we wanted to get to.
I really want to unpack that, and that's we can kind of see where that snowball's from. But there's a lot that people need to know in this, because it all leads to legislation, which means to ultimately freedoms, limitations, powers, and the judicial process. So I think we need to unpack all that.
The other thing as well, which I don't know if we'll get heavily into, but a lot of people are in uproar. And there's also a lot of people in support, even on our channel when I was putting up on Instagram the other night. Where do people fall in terms of Canada recognizing Palestine as a country? And it was interesting seeing the broad response. Some people were disgusted by it, and some people said it's the first decent thing Prime Minister Mark Carney has done. So that's obviously a big thing, especially we'll set aside the fact that our Canadian government website dictates Hamas, which is the government in Palestine, as an actual terrorist organization, currently holding hostages of people from Israel. You know where President Trump stands on that, and it's going to be interesting to see that. But I wanted to read a tweet, which I still call it a tweet.
You're going to read Kirk's.
I am going to read. This is shout out to our friend Kirk Lubomov. He made me laugh. I ended a meeting the other day by reading this.
It's Canada, very cheeky.
Canada's stance: we do not negotiate with terrorists. Hamas: yeah, but we want a country. Canada: okay, as you wish. Hamas: thank you. We'll pass the good news on to our hostages.
Yeah, there's so much truth in that. Like when there was a whole segment talking about the necessity of comedy, and comedy is only funny because there's truth in it. Like, you know what I mean? If there was no truth in any of these things, you would not laugh.
Yep.
And that's exactly what this is pointing to.
Well, let's not leave our friend hanging any longer. We have a great friend of the show, Mr. Bruce Pardy, Professor Bruce Pardy. How are you, my friend?
The one and the only Bruce.
I'm good. I'm really good. Thanks guys for having me on.
We bumped into each other at the Reclaiming Canada conference.
Yes.
And it was really, really good to see you there. And immediately I was like, you're in town. Let's grab you. Let's get you in the studio. Our audience always loves having you on, and it shows through the viewership and the comments. And
great to hear. Thanks.
Both happy and negative, which is, I think, the whole point of discussing these types of things is to speak to those things. So thank you for jumping in here last minute.
My pleasure. Always good to be with you.
How are you enjoying Alberta?
I love coming to Alberta.
Good.
It's like a breath of fresh air. It's got a different feel, frankly, than Ontario.
Okay.
I don't know what it is, but there's a spirit in the people that is perceptible.
Interesting.
Wow, that's cool.
Well, we love having you here.
We do.
It's the second time in the last probably 4 months. Right?
Oh yeah,
You've
more than that. I've been
here
here a couple times.
Yeah, I think it's the third or fourth time.
That's awesome.
Which we love.
Okay, well, we will eventually get to. You have written a constitution.
Yes.
For Alberta.
Yes.
Yeah, it's very cool.
We're going to get to that later.
Sure.
We're not going to get to that now. You guys have to wait. And we're going to dive in depth because this is a really important deal. And I want you to add your words on top of this. But essentially what we have talked about in the past on past episodes of Citizen is that without actually changing the framework by which Canada or Alberta continues, we're going to continue having the same problem. It's just different players underneath the same broader problem. Is that accurate?
Correct. So my biggest fear for Alberta is that it will succeed in separating from Canada and then will make itself into a little Canada. That is, it will keep all the bits of Canada that it has right now inside Alberta. So Alberta, like Canada, has a Westminster system of government. It is ruled by the Crown. It has a managerial state. It has single-payer healthcare. It has a system of public benefits. Mm-hmm. It has different rights for different groups of people, like Aboriginal rights. In all of these ways and more, Alberta right now is a smaller version of Canada. Mm-hmm. And so if you really want to escape Canada, it's all very well to escape the Canada that is outside Alberta, to escape Ottawa, fair enough. Mm-hmm. But you also have to purge the bits of Canada that are inside Alberta. And that means dislodging the vested interests inside Alberta that are privileged by those aspects of the Canadian system inside Alberta. And that's going to be a task.
Wow. It reminds me of what our late father-in-law would always say, Jeremy. It's people in search of the idea the grass is always greener on the other side, mm-hmm. in search of trying to find a better life somewhere else. But he would always say, the problem is wherever you go, there you are.
Yes, right.
Meaning you're actually the problem, and you keep bringing your problems to these new locations.
That's right.
That might be, if it's not done correctly, the story of Alberta. Yeah. Hopefully it's not.
Hopefully it's not. But see, this is the opportunity. So I've said before, and I've said it with you guys, that the potential here is for Alberta, number one, to save itself.
Yeah.
But number two, in doing so, to inadvertently save Canada.
Yeah.
And then maybe even, if it's done well, to save Western civilization, to be the beacon in the dark, to show the rest of this civilization the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Right. And the way forward. But that will take some clarity, some vision, some courage, and so on to start again, to start from scratch and say, all right, we've screwed this up. Why did we screw it up? And how can we start again so as to get to the place that we always think we're supposed to be there? Mm-hmm. Yep.
Can I throw this? I had a conversation with a friend online, and it was a bit of a dispute, and it's a very real world example, and I would love to bounce it off you and get your take on it, because I think this represents a lot of people on both sides. And so I'm not going to say their name, their friend, and we were kind of going back, and it was passionate. And I'm not going to go into all the details, but I thought it would be very, very cool to kind of get your take on it. So a friend posted something up for a petition for Alberta to stay, which I found kind of funny because I was going,
Right.
what petition would force someone to stay? It just doesn't work. Anyway, but I was like, if someone wants to leave and you have a petition saying, look, this document says you have to stay. It's like,
We're doing a referendum to leave, but they're going to do a referendum to make us stay. So we're going to do a referendum on their referendum to leave, and it's like
so that I kind of chuckled when I first saw that. Anyway, so that's kind of my mentality going into this. Everyone should know. And so I said, so I was a bit heated in my response. So I'll read mine word for word, and it says, "Is everyone here not aware of our current economic situation? Do we not want a better province for the next generation? We are drowning in the highest cost of living Canada has ever seen, and yet Alberta, we are being capped with our resource production and being forced to send equalization payments to have-not provinces. How can we want this for our kids, for our grandkids? I'm all for staying in Canada, but we need a better situation for the future. Something has to change." And they came in real hot. Which I was very surprised about, because I was going,
is this an Albertan or a different?
This is an Albertan, yeah. Okay. So they came and said, as for our current economic situation, I'm very aware of what is currently happening, and I still choose to unite as one Canada. From where I stand and the research I've done, we are in a better economic situation staying as one Canada. Alberta benefits from the market access, trade agreements, stable currency, and investment confidence by staying in Canada, not to speak of the endless costs that would be associated with breaking out on our own. And so I'm going to jump ahead back to mine, and I guess restated my stance a little bit, just saying I get that and I'm for staying again, but something has to change, and if it doesn't, then this is what essentially it's the catalyst. I'm saying,
yes,
to bring change.
Yes.
To which then another person jumped into the conversation and said, if you're all staying for Canada, sign the petition. It's that simple. Don't let anyone mistake the desire to make our city, province, and country better for a desire to separate, to leave, or become American. Alberta has the best cost of living in the country. Calgary, Edmonton have two of the lowest income housing ratios of any major city across Canada. Before you fall victim to political rhetoric and transfer payments, please look it up. 3/4 of the transfer payments paid out to provinces are based on population per capita. The balance is based on complicated formulas based on taxation and earnings per capita. In Alberta, we benefit from oil in the ground. It's not something we put there, worked for, or anything to make it happen. We are blessed to have an abundance of natural resources, and while the system isn't perfect, it doesn't mean that we have to leave. In my lifetime, Alberta has been a have and have not province. I don't think we should resent the system. I lost my spot. I don't think we should resent the system while the system isn't perfect. It doesn't mean that we have to leave. If in my lifetime, Alberta has been both have and have not. Oh, I got that. I said that already. If you're not going to debate this stuff, please be educated, which is always a fun tactic when someone is going after their education and yours, not just headlines and one-side articles. But in fact, I'm an economist. And so he goes on to talk about that. He studied this, which is like great and cool. I agree with that. But I kind of alluded to in my previous comments, there's experts that are actual experts at high levels who don't agree on this whatsoever, and it's up for debate. So I wanted to get your thoughts on kind of that stance, because there's a lot of heated people that came afterwards against me just saying that I'm trying to run away and just not solve the problems. And this person goes on to say, I want to teach my children that we stick to it, we stay. And I had a lot of responses to that, but I decided, because of how heated it was, it wasn't necessary, it wasn't productive. But I did think it represents two populations here that we're going to be dealing with.
Yes.
And would love what your initial thoughts are.
Well, my take is that a lot of people want to stay inside a Canada that is an imaginary country inside their heads. It's not the real one. There are two Canadas.
Yeah.
One is real and one is imaginary.
Yeah.
And the imaginary one is the one people know of and think of and cheer on and wave the flag of and think that they belong to.
Yeah.
And that's all very well. There's, people often think about their own countries in that way, in some kind of a mythological way, an idealized way. And that's fair enough. But it's not the reality. The argument has been made that Alberta should separate on economic grounds. And people other than me have made that case. And it looks like a sound case to me on a pure economic basis. But that to me is almost beside the point. Let's just put that aside. Let's say it's neutral.
Yeah.
That's not the reason to leave. The reason to leave is that Canada has become something else. Canada has become a managerial society. The federal government, in addition to all of these economically restrictive policies like equalization, like emission caps, like tanker bans, like single-use plastics, like all the ways they're getting in the way of resource development, all of which are real and good reasons to leave. There are also more fundamental governance problems, like representation, House of Commons, in the Senate. But even that is surface stuff.
Yeah.
What you've got is a governing ideology in this country that tells people what to do. This is in the real Canada, both governments and frankly Canadians, many Canadians, think that the job of the government is to provide authority and order and direction and to solve social problems. That is, we are to be guided by the authority of the state. It's almost in our cultural DNA.
Yeah.
The peace, order, and good government is in our Constitution, right? It's not life, liberties, and pursuit of happiness. It's it's peace, order, and good government, meaning we are the authority, we'll tell you what to do. And it is this attitude that is deeply ingrained both in the attitudes in this country and in our Constitution that produce things like this new bill that Carney's put out on speech, hate speech, C9.
Yeah.
And this is not a new thing. So one of the reasons that Carney is able to put out this bill is that the Supreme Court of Canada has already years ago said that it is constitutional to have restrictions on this thing we're calling hate speech.
Yeah.
Now, we have a charter right to freedom of expression. So do the Americans in their Bill of Rights. Ours means something different than the Americans does purely because of our courts. Our courts have said, yeah, it's okay. It's not a violation of that guarantee. And they call it a guarantee. It's called a guarantee in the charter to have legislation that restricts your ability to express detestation of other groups of people. Okay? Let's just be clear about this. In the United States, hate speech is not a prohibited thing.
Yeah.
Their freedom of expression, their courts have said the government may not restrict your ability to express dislike, your hatred of other groups of people. And in fact, that's the way a free country is supposed to work. If you're in a free country, you are allowed to hate other people because that's part of being human. And if you do hate them, then you are allowed to say that you do, because that's one of your thoughts.
Yeah.
Now, we're not talking here about threatening violence, because that ought to be not okay.
Yeah.
And that's also now infringing on other rights.
That's
right?
exactly right.
Yeah.
And that is also, of course, prohibited in the U.S. You can't threaten people with violence. That's where their line is.
Yep.
It's not where our line is.
And I think this is why I think we've seen almost the redefinition of words being violent.
Well, sure. In part, you could say that, I suppose.
You said that's not our line.
Well, it's not.
Where's our line? Do we even have a clear line?
Well, so the Supreme Court has said things like this. It is, you cannot restrict speech that's merely offensive, but you can restrict speech that vilifies or detests other groups of people. All right. No,
What
I don't know where the line between those two things
Nobody
is.
does.
Well, we talked about this last time. Even in, I forget which bill it was, where they rewrote what hate speech means. Essentially, it was a bunch of synonyms of hate speech.
Well, yes.
So it didn't give any clarity or definitive or any definition.
It
so
even
it's
used
the same thing
word
as
hate in its definition too.
Yeah.
Which was
But
ridiculous.
essentially, it's beauty's in the eye of the beholder. It's hate's in the eye of the beholder and interpreter.
Yes. Well, this is what you end up doing, right? You put in other words that are trying to define the first word. And you'll note the slippery slope that speech is on in this country.
Yeah.
So it's not just that the federal government is putting forward this bill. We have provisions in our various human rights codes that prohibit discrimination. And as well, we have professional regulators, for nurses and doctors and lawyers and so on. And it is becoming the case that you are not allowed to discriminate in your speech. So, for example, if you say that you think that there are two sexes and you're a nurse, this is Amy Ham's experience in BC, then you're going to be disciplined by your professional body because you're now discriminating in your speech against a group of people. Okay, this is a degree to which censorship and control of speech has where we've arrived in this country. So we pretend to be a free country. All of the rhetoric says we're a free country. We have a Charter of Rights. More and more, that is not true. And the people who want to stay in Canada are living in the imaginary Canada in their heads. And the real Canada is one in which the state, we are all under the thumb of the state. And a lot of people are quite happy with that. And that's part of the problem. The place that many of us have come to and came to during COVID, frankly, was the realization that we live in a country, or let me put it differently, that we thought we lived in a country that we realized does not actually exist. And we have realized that a lot of our countrymen are a different kind of person than we thought, who approve of this degree of government supervision. And that, to my mind, is a more compelling reason for Alberta to want to leave the country than the pure economic calculation. One can differ about how the economic calculation is going to turn out. I don't exactly know. I'm persuaded by the analyses that I've seen that suggest that Alberta would be better off. But, there may be arguments to make, but that's really beside the point. Don't you want to be in a free country? And if you do, then the experience over the past little while, I think, has shown that Canada is not that country and has no reasonable prospect of becoming one. Over time, over decades, Alberta's attempts to change things, to suggest changes to things, and my favorite example is the Triple E Senate. Decades ago, when there was a drive to change our Senate into one that's elected and one where the seats are distributed differently so that there's a more offsetting effect to the concentration of population in Ontario and Quebec. Okay? That went nowhere. And there's no interest on the part of the powers that be who control the central government. And so the idea to me of Alberta going back and trying again to reform this country, I mean, how many times can you do this and reasonably think that you've got a shot? I think Alberta has exhausted these attempts. And if you keep going back, I've used this analogy before and so have others, you're starting to look like an abused spouse. You're the one anxious to maintain the relationship. The other party doesn't care that much. They're not changing their behavior. Why would you keep going and asking them to change? You know what the situation is. It's time for you to go.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're well into this. Let's go. I want to keep going through Constitution and dive right in. What do you think?
Sure.
Because we're well into it. I think it's, before we dive into your Constitution that you wrote, I want to go through the history, because I don't know how many Canadians know the history of the Canadian Constitution and the Canadian Charter.
Right.
And I'm going to say some words that maybe a lot of people, I would think, especially our age, don't really understand this. We know the date 1867 in Canadian history.
Yes.
But I would suggest we weren't truly our own nation until 1982.
That's correct.
Where we were patriated from UK. Because up to that point, from my understanding, the UK Parliament could still amend our laws and the things that have been done. Is that correct in terms of...
Well, it happened in stages. Yes.
Yes, well, stages throughout the whole thing.
So the three main stages are 1867,
yes,
1931, and 1982.
Yeah.
Okay, so
31's the Statute of Westminster.
That's right. So 1867 is when Canada becomes more or less sort of self-governing.
Yeah.
You've got provinces in the federal government. The BNA Act, as it then was, sets out the division of powers between the provinces and the federal government. And the BNA Act, as the name suggests, the British North America Act, was an act of the British Parliament.
Yeah.
Right?
So Canada didn't have full sovereignty because the UK Parliament still had the power to amend, right, or legislate for Canada.
Correct.
Essentially.
Exactly so.
Okay.
Right? So the BNA Act is basically a promise that says, okay, here's how we're going to let you carry on yourselves. You are essentially a colony, but we're going to give you a degree of self-government.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the The Statute of Westminster comes along and actually just doubles down on that. It says, from now on, we are not going to exercise any final authority on anything you do. The call is yours. That doesn't create complete independence, but it is a significant step down that road. So you still can't technically call yourself an independent country,
Yeah.
but nevertheless, that's the way you're functioning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So semi-sovereign.
Semi-sovereign, let's call it
Sure.
that. Yeah. And then 1982 is when the Constitution's actually patriated, and this BNA Act, which was a statute of the British Parliament, becomes the part of the Constitution of this new country,
Yeah.
along with the Constitution Act 1982,
Yeah.
where the charter is found.
That's right.
Right.
And notwithstanding clause
And the notwithstanding clause.
at the same time. The reason I wanted to go a little bit down the history,
Yeah.
because you look in the mid 1700s when the U.S., well, not quite the U.S. yet, but you had the group that was in what is now known United States that wanted to fully separate from the crown.
Right.
It wasn't this gradual shifting, okay, you take this, you take this, which over time you are steeped in a culture and a way of governing. And hence you talked about Canadian people are in our DNA and our culture to actually have a managerial state, where the United States of America, they were done with that style, cut it off and said, we're forging our own path completely separate.
Well, yes, but let's just be careful here. So the Americans have a managerial state too.
Okay.
Right. And this managerial state is a thing that has grown up over the past century or so. If you go back to the origins of the American Revolution, I mean, at that time, the king in England wielded power, but it wasn't. I'm not sure I would call it managerial. It was certainly authoritative. It was dictatorial.
Sure.
But it wasn't managerial. And so the one weakness, or one of the weaknesses of the American Constitution, now don't get me wrong, it's a better Constitution than ours. But one of its weaknesses is that it has allowed, even in the U.S., a managerial state to arise. And that's because of some developments that happened long ago in the late 1800s, early 1900s, but I won't go into that right now.
Yep.
But that they still have a weakness there, but they're at least having a fight about it.
Yeah.
Right. There are elements in the U.S. that I understand this and say that this is no good and has to go and so on. And even the Supreme Court of the United States more recently has looked like it recognizes, understands the problem, and maybe doing something about it. We'll have to wait and see. But in Canada, I think it's a more deeply entrenched deference to authority idea,
Okay.
whether it's a managerial state or whether it's the crown or whether it's parliament. We do what we're told, and we think that everybody should do what they're told. And if you don't do what you're told, then you're not being properly Canadian.
I'm glad
sorry, I was just going to say, so it's such a bizarre way of, I've read in your documents a few times where it's kind of ingrained in our DNA as Canadians that we have that. And I struggle with that so much. But like, I was also listening to you on another podcast, and you were talking about the dangers of the emergency powers. And then also the fact that the emergency powers can be determined by the very same people who have the emergency powers.
Sure.
So we can say today is deemed dangerous, and that gives me special powers today, and now I'm going to do this.
Right.
And as you have said in many of your things, is that there's so many people in our DNA who have no problem with that, who want to comply, have no issues, which has always gone against my DNA.
Well, let's talk about the central feature of our Constitution.
Yeah.
And it's actually a feature that is more or less shared in the American Constitution.
Yeah.
And in fact, all written constitutions in the Western world have this feature, and it's turned out to be a problem.
Yeah.
But it's especially so in Canada, which is this.
Yeah.
The default position of our Constitution gives to our governments the authority, the mandate to provide for the common good, the public interest, the general welfare, for peace, order, and good government. In other words, the default position in our Constitution is that the state is all powerful. It can do anything. Now, when I say the state, I mean all bits of the state together. I mean the legislature. I mean the government, the bureaucracy, and the courts. Just imagine, if those institutions cooperate, if they're all on the same page, then together,
There's nothing they can't do.
there is nothing that they cannot do. Nothing, literally nothing. If they imagine this, the government does something or the legislature passes something, and you look at it and say, that's not right. So you challenge it in the court, and the court says, no, it's fine.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
There's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
And that's because of the default rule.
But is that a really hard? That seems like a really tough place to get to with that many pieces of individuals involved.
Oh no, it's happening all the time. It's for example, it's happening with hate speech. So the court has long said, no, it's okay for the government to restrict hate speech. Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's now in this new act, but it's also in the human rights codes. It's now something that the professional regulators do. It's the human rights tribunals. In other words, everybody's in on this program to restrict your ability to say, you know what, I don't like those people.
Yeah.
They can do anything. And so but some people might say, well, but hold on, but what about other parts of the Constitution? We have rights. What about rights? What about the Charter? Okay, well, here's the architecture, the basic architecture of the Constitution. It's the default position, which is the state is all powerful. And then what do?
Same thing for the U.S. as well. You're saying
same thing for the U.S. Same thing for the U.S.
Okay.
But then we try and say, try and describe exceptions. Okay, all powerful except. Okay, what's the exceptions? Well, charter rights. All powerful except. Well, you can't infringe freedom of speech. But this is what we've done. So you always start with unlimited power. And then you go to the charter and say, well, is this a circumstance in which the courts are going to say that, well, maybe you've gone too far now and you got to carve out some, small area for an individual to have his own way. But note the Achilles heel of all written constitutions, which is they are written in words. And words have ambiguities. And the courts control what the ambiguities mean. Mm-hmm. So we are not ruled over by the Constitution. Yeah. We are ruled over by the courts. In a system where you have individual rights in a Constitution, that doesn't mean that the Constitution rules. It means the courts rule by being able to tell you what the rights mean. So we have, as we've been talking about, the right to free speech in our charter, but that's all it says. It says freedom of expression.
Yeah.
Okay.
What does that mean?
Nobody knows what that means. Yeah. Because there's a line in there somewhere that's not identified. And we've left it to the court to tell us where it is. And in our case, the court has said, oh, sorry, that doesn't include hate speech. That's the thing we're going to call hate speech. Go ahead. You can censor that. Okay, for my money, and everybody's going to be different about their opinion about this, but for my money, that means you do not, in fact, have free speech.
Yeah, of course.
Right.
So you're saying that's a flaw within our current constitutions, others around the world.
Yes.
What have you proposed in Alberta's potentially new constitution to avoid that problem?
I propose to flip that default. Okay, so here's the default again. The state is all powerful except. Okay, here's how you flip it. The state is powerless. It can do nothing except.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you're going to the Constitution to find out what the state can do, it's not a blank check with some exceptions. It is a blank check in the sense that you've got nothing. You've got nothing to work with unless you can find something specifically laid out in the Constitution that says the state can do this.
So instead of a blanket, you do everything. It's you do nothing except we'll
tell you what you can do.
We'll tell you what you do as citizens. Here's what you'll be responsible for.
And here are the three things. Primary.
What number is this in the Constitution?
That's number. I think it's number 4 or 5. Yeah.
Keep going.
The more I hear you flesh this out, I read your whole Constitution, and the more I hear you flesh this out, I start to understand why you put so much focus on the courts, on the terms limits.
5.
6 years for the judges, 15 for the police, because it breaks the unity of all power. I see it.
It breaks the unity of power. You're trying to disempower the people who control the state.
I see it now. Yeah.
I'm going to read number 4 or 5, flipping the default.
Okay, good.
Is that what?
Yes,
that's what we're referring to. So just so you guys know, there's number 1 through 4, which sets out certain parameters beforehand. So number 5 starts out by saying, we now have a state that may be necessary, but it is also a problem. The state needs to be powerful enough to keep the peace, but not powerful enough to threaten the freedom of the people. In Western countries, governments have become the biggest threat to liberty. Constitutions grant them open-ended authority and then attempt to curb it. That's what you were just saying.
Correct.
All except.
Right.
The Canadian Constitution gives to the federal government the mandate to provide for the peace, order, and good government of Canada. The United States Constitution grants Congress the power to provide for the quote-unquote general welfare. Good government and general welfare, like beauty, lies in the eyes of the beholder. Constitutional rights carve out limitations. The American Bill of Rights and the Canadian Charter attempts to draw lines constraining how far the state can go. The state can do anything except, for example, infringe upon freedom of speech. But courts also, part of the state, control what the right means. Neither the courts nor the rights have prevented government intrusion into the nooks and crannies of daily life. To keep the state in check, the Constitution flips the default. It does not grant the state open-ended jurisdiction, but attempts to add exceptions. Instead, it makes the state powerless, except for the powers expressly granted.
And so here's the actual writing of it. No part of the state, including the legislature, executive, and judiciary alone or in combination, has powers or jurisdiction except as expressly provided in the Constitution, as you were saying. No part of the state has power or jurisdiction to provide for the common good, general welfare, public necessity, or emergency.
Right.
And then so the rest of the Constitution goes out to shape what?
I've suggested that it should describe three basic things. Mm-hmm. Three of these exceptions to give the state power to do something. Mm-hmm. Okay. And those three main areas are, number one, keep the peace. Right? If someone attacks you, you want to be able to call the police.
Of course.
Right? And you want them to be prosecuted. Number two, some way to resolve disputes between citizens. In other words, a court system. If you have a dispute with your neighbor about, whether or not his fence is on your property, then you want some place to go and resolve the dispute. You don't want to end up fighting with him. That's number two. Number three, you want the state to protect you from the outside. In invading armies and people who don't belong, you want military and you want borders. Okay? But those are the three main functions and very little else. Keep the peace, resolve disputes, protect the country.
Yeah.
And if the powers of the state are limited to those three and otherwise the state is powerless, then just imagine the things that the state does now that it cannot do under this new Constitution. Now, just think of all the things the state does right now. Now, here are just a sample. Can't provide health care. Can't provide public schools. Can't expropriate property. Can't extract taxes. I mean, I can name things all afternoon. But just to give you a flavor, those are the first four things, or first, four random things that the state now cannot do. And let me say this. When people sit down and think, well, what should a constitution say? Here's the error. It's understandable that what people will be inclined to do is start with the constitution that they have and say, all right, what should we do without? Mm-hmm. Instead of forget that constitution. Start from nothing. Start from nothing and think, all right, so what is the minimum that we need in order to be free and to survive? Okay? It's sort of like doing a budget. A government budget even. So you got a government budget and you're in deficit. You got huge debt. And you think, well, we're spending too much money. What are we going to do? Here's the wrong way to do it. You take the budget as it exists and you think, all right, what can we cut? Then you go through the lines and you think, oh, well, we can't cut that because that's really inconvenient. And we can't cut that because they'll be upset. And we can't cut that because, we really need that. And so you end up fiddling around the margins and trying to find efficiencies, but essentially keeping the budget that you have.
Yeah.
Instead of saying, we're spending too much money, forget the budget. What do we have to spend money on? In other words, what is the minimum necessary in order for the thing to stay afloat? And then you prevent yourself from adding things in just because it's difficult to get rid of. So the danger here is you start with the Constitution that you have and try to fix it. Don't do that. Scrap it and start with a blank slate and think, in order to be free, what is the minimum state that we require? And let's just pause for a minute, because free is a big word. And a lot of people use it, and they might not mean the same thing. So let's just, for a moment, consider what free means.
You're trying to strip this right down.
I was trying to strip this right down to
the studs.
I'm trying to strip this right down to the studs and essentially challenge people who say they want to be free, and thank God that they do. To say,
what does that actually mean?
What do you mean?
Yeah, I get that.
Right?
So you said something earlier, which kind of threw me for a loop in what you're just talking about.
Yep.
You said not to extract taxes.
Not to extract taxes.
Can we flesh that out?
Sure.
And you'll have to convince me on this, because I do think, and I don't have a problem paying taxes. From my world, it's necessary in order for roads and traffic lights and things of public. Like, the alternative is, do we want private organization responsible for all the roads? And then I just go down that path. So where does that fit in this with the new constitution when it comes to those basic needs that the government provides?
A fair question. So let me just back up a couple of steps.
Yeah.
Okay. What does free mean? In my mind, free means that you are not subject to the coercion of other people. In other words, they can't use force against you or the threats of force to make you do things you don't want to do. Okay? If they can do that, then you're not free.
Yeah.
Okay? And vice versa. It means that you can't use force against them to make them do things that they don't want to do. Okay? So, if we're going to have a free country, that means that nobody can use force against other people without their consent, of course.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's consider that like the first rule. No force. That should be not controversial.
Yeah.
Except that everybody includes the state. So if you want to be free from being coerced, that means your neighbor, but it also means the state. So we have a universal rule now. Everybody is subject to this rule that says you can't use force against other people. You can't coerce them. But if the state can't coerce you, that means that the state can't make laws that govern your behavior, because that's what laws are. Laws are the use of force to govern your behavior. So let's say the state wants a law that says that you can't ride your bike without wearing a helmet. That is the use of force. You're not interfering with anybody else. They're making you do what you don't want to do. That's not a free country, right? So we start with that small idea, and then we extrapolate. Okay, so then how can we have the state do anything? How can we have the state do those three things?
Let's make something a little bit more of an extreme law that we can probably all agree on.
All right.
But also I think it's worth unpacking.
Okay.
Drunk driving.
Drunk driving. Well, that's a bit more complicated.
Okay.
Right. So let's get back to that.
Okay. Because I was gonna say the helm. Okay. I'll let you do.
Okay. But it's a good question.
Okay.
Right. So, but I've said that the state can use its force to keep the peace. And that's the use of force.
Yes. Okay.
Because that's one of the exceptions to this general rule. We have a general rule that says no force. Okay. But it's got to have a couple of exceptions. Here's the first one. Somebody attacks you, you got to use self-defense. That's the use of force, but you're doing it in response to the use of force.
Yes.
Okay. Second exception is the state can prevent the use of force. They can use the police and the courts and even the military to prevent and punish the use of force.
Yeah.
Okay. So now you've got a reason for having the state.
Yes.
Okay. Now some people, and people I respect, say that we should have a state of anarchy where there is no state, because after all, as you read out,
well, that's where I was going to ask a question.
Right, because the state has become the biggest threat to our liberty. So why don't we just not have one? And here's the reason, for my money, why we should have a state, a small one, but should have one, which is if you don't have one, then you have a vacuum.
Yeah, the vacuum's filled by...
And the vacuum is filled by the strongest person with the most guns.
Yes.
So you don't want that, because then you have the opposite of liberty.
And we've seen that even in modern times in different countries.
Sure. So what you're trying to do is create a state that is small enough so that it doesn't interfere with your liberty, but big enough to keep the peace and to fill the vacuum. Okay? But that's a very small state. It is subject to the general rule, which is you can't coerce other people to do what they don't want to do, assuming they're not using force themselves. Okay? So extracting taxes is the use of force. They extract taxes for their own purposes. They extract taxes because they want money. They want your money to engage in projects that they think are important. That's exactly what they must not be able to do.
So then how do you do that?
Right. So how do you do that?
Can I ask a quick question before the how?
Yeah.
I'm playing with this idea of what you're explaining, true freedom, and I totally get what you're doing. You're ripping away all these things to try to, what does it truly mean to be free?
Yep.
I can do what I want when I want, and assuming we're not going to infringe upon the rights of other people.
Correct.
I call that being a decent human being.
Right.
Okay, let's say I have freedom, but there's also duty that comes with me, which is, for me, I have freedom, but duty is I'm choosing certain things. So, for example, yes. My wife and I are married.
Yep.
I have a duty and a responsibility that I willingly chose, which lays down what some people might define as true freedom. Mm-hmm. Is that kind of making sense?
Maybe.
I don't know what you're getting at.
Keep going.
Out of duty and responsibility for my wife and my family, I am not going to do whatever I want, however I want.
Yes.
Because we committed to each other when we got married. There's certain things that we're going to do to build our family and our life together.
Yep.
But some people might say, well, that's not true freedom. You can't do what you want when you want.
But you are choosing. That's
exactly. So that's my point. So I'm coming back to the taxes thing with that idea. True freedom, the state can't coerce you.
Yes.
So do we voluntarily but
right.
do that and give or?
But you see, you're getting to the distinction between the being free and not being free. Okay. It is the distinction between voluntary and involuntary. You can choose to do anything you want voluntarily. If you choose to take on duties and execute them because you think they're right.
Yeah.
You are acting voluntarily.
Yes.
You are governing yourself. And
Okay.
And so be it.
Fair
That's
enough.
good.
Fair
right?
enough.
Yeah.
Those are, if you like, they're moral duties that you think are important. Great.
Yeah.
Okay. It's still voluntary.
Self-directed.
Because it is not a state authority making you do this. Okay.
The bicycle example is a good clarity there.
Yeah, right.
Got it.
Maybe you think your kids should wear helmets.
Yeah.
Fair enough. They're
Then
your
do it.
kids.
Then do it.
You then do it.
Yeah.
Right. You don't want some other authority coming in and saying, no, we don't want you to make that decision yourself.
Yeah.
We're making it for you. Here you go. Okay. So back to your taxes problem. This is a problem because even a small state is going to have some expenses. I mean, it's not going to be comparable to what we have now.
Yeah.
But you gotta staff the police. You gotta have courts. Where are you going to get the money from? And the short answer is, well, I don't know exactly, but you can't do it through force, because if you give the state that power, that's one of the sources of the whole problem that we have right now.
Do you think this is a problem that founding fathers, for example, the U.S. and others, have run into, where they like this idea, but then it comes to the how? And you can't.
Well, the founding
because people are greedy. They're not going to naturally. They're going to just think the other person's going to give towards this, right? I want good words, but I want my neighbor to give more than me.
Sure. Even in the U.S. though, John Adams, I think, said that the U.S. Constitution was written for a moral people.
Yep, that's right.
And you will see this language a lot with respect to government and leaders. Like they will say, our leaders should honor the Constitution. And you'll even hear this in Canada sometimes. Like, the courts are not honoring the text of the Constitution. My point has always been, if your Constitution requires that powerful people honor it, it's not much of a Constitution, because the one thing you can count on is that they will not honor it. In other words, if powerful people are able to not honor the Constitution, then they won't.
Yeah.
A Constitution that requires the honorable behavior of powerful people is a house of straw. I mean, the whole reason for having a Constitution is that people are not honorable. If our leaders were restrained and wise, then we wouldn't need a Constitution. We just say, yeah, you just tell us what to do. You be the king, and your word is the law, but you're a wise and honorable person. You just do it. We know that doesn't work. And so we have a Constitution. And yet our Constitution requires that people be honorable. That doesn't make any sense. We have to design a Constitution that cannot be dishonored. It's not possible to dishonor the Constitution. It has to set up structures and methods and rules so that it's not possible for a single person or group of people to seize control of the way the state works. That's the protection. It's not some airy-fairy set of principles. You can't fix this by simply listing in the Constitution the ideas you think are important, because powerful people will ignore those ideas if they're not, if their compliance with them is not required in a systemic sense. So you do not want to give your state the right, the ability, the power to extract taxes from you. They will abuse it.
So in your mind, the how is set to the side as to have to figure that out. But the residing premise is freedom has to be upheld.
Freedom has to be the
meaning
first.
You can't be coerced.
You cannot be
by
coerced.
a state or a higher authority to make you do something.
No, I don't want to lead you wrong. There are some possibilities about how to raise revenue for this minimal state so that it can function, and I think that's an important step. But there's an inclination to want to go to those first, and for me to work out what the details of the scheme's going to be.
I'm trying to do that.
Right. It's like, okay, so the engineering of this, as in, okay, how's this going to work? You know, what are that's not the first stage. The first stage is, what are the principles involved? And what do the principles mean? And what those principles mean is what is demanded. In other words, this is not a fiddling around. This is not an engineered thing. This is a set of ideas that need to be honored.
And you build, it's a foundation.
Yeah, that's right.
And then you build on it.
Yep.
I got you.
Can I walk through a couple of scenarios to help bring clarity? For example, I'll do my own personal one, my trampoline example. This is very silly, but also I'm curious how you
often the silliest ones are the ones that illustrate the idea.
Yeah, and I think that's what my brain is kind of getting at here is, we had this. I got a bylaw notification because I moved a trampoline into the park next to me because it's like almost attached to my
and
property.
just trying to charge the children $5 to jump in. Just kidding.
And so we had just put fresh sod on and we moved it over, let the sod grow, and then we're going to bring it back. And so I understand it's not my property. It's a park, and I happen to be on the park. Like it's like I'm right attached to it.
Right.
And it's tucked away. Anyway, so those are all my excuses.
Right.
I had it on there. Some lady came, knocked on my door, and I gave her some attitude. I was like, I'm moving it. I said I'm going to move it. And she goes, it's just a big no, blah, blah, blah. And it's 10 o'clock at night on a Friday. I had guests over, and so I was a bit grumpy. Yep. So she called the bylaw. And bylaw gave me a notification, and I moved it back. Right. Once the grass was good to go. I waited until I could. Right. What would a scenario like that do without force?
Right. Right.
Where would everybody have their trampolines? Would everybody do what I did and not respect the boundaries outside of their own?
Okay, well, so we're assuming something. And that is, we're assuming that the state is going to own the park.
Okay.
Right? So let's just imagine for a moment that that space was owned by another private person.
Yes.
Okay. Now you'd be trespassing.
Yes.
Right? So they wouldn't be able to do that unless the person said, don't worry about it, move it when you can. But a lot of our public behavior problems comes from the fact that the state owns so much space. Now, as the owner of the property, the state is more or less able to determine what the rules are going to be for that space. Limited by the limits that we try to put on the unlimited power.
The same way I would enforce my own property.
Right, but so just imagine, let's do a brain experiment for a minute. Imagine that with the exception of some very specific things related to keeping the peace and resolving disputes in the military, that everything else was privately owned. Every other space was privately owned. Okay, well, if that was the case, then whoever owns the space can set the rules for what happens in the space and who can come on and what happens. So another example, people sometimes ask me, well, but if it's just about a force, doesn't that mean that people can, disrobe in the park and display things that people shouldn't see and public nudity and all those kinds of things? And my response is, well, that's assuming the park is public. What if the park was private?
Yeah.
If that's the case, the owner of the park could decide whether or not people could be nude in the park.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't your park, it would be none of your business.
Yeah.
Right? So you solve these problems by going back a step and saying, what are we taking for granted here? And the more rope you give the state to own and control and supervise things, the more you're sliding from where we want to be to where we are right now.
So for example, there's a part of me that goes, well, if it was publicly owned, that park next to me, we would probably lose the benefit of the green space park because there'd probably be no, at least on my quick thinking on this, would be no monetized way to have that much land available.
Right.
So a business would less likely develop it, turn to property, and thus no green space.
Well, perhaps. But the thing about this different kind of scheme is that we don't know how it's going to work.
Yeah.
Because what you've actually got there is an actually free market in almost everything, which we don't have right now in almost anything.
Yeah.
We don't have a free market in almost anything because in every single transaction, the state has some role.
Yeah.
Whether it's even like if you sell me your bike, then technically speaking, I'm supposed to pay GST. And that's the state saying, well, us too. We're part of this transaction. In a free market, the state has no role.
Yeah.
None. And the number of transactions in this society where the state does not have a role is very, very small, like maybe a garage sale.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the state's interfering in everything.
Yeah.
Okay? It's interfering in the market value of park space. Now, the reason that we don't have private parks is because we have public parks, and they're free, but they're paid for by your taxes.
Yes, of course.
Right? So in a different kind of scheme, we have to think differently, and we have to understand that we're going to figure out problems in a different way. It's not going to be a bureaucratic way. It's not going to be based on policy. It's going to be based upon transactions.
Yeah.
What's it worth to you to have a park next door to take your kids? It's probably worth something to you for which you're willing to pay, and you're able to pay because you won't be paying taxes.
Yeah.
You'll be much wealthier than you are right now, and you'll have money available to spend on things that you think are valuable, and people are offering you because you want to buy them.
Yeah. You know what I love and I find very refreshing is my children. I have an 11, 9-year-old and a 5-year-old, but to my 11 and 9-year-old, they did a lemonade stand, and this is actually funny too, because on our last home, our kids got a notification from a bylaw officer.
Boy. How about that?
At a lemonade stand.
Right.
It was a very good looking lemonade stand. That's maybe why. It was beautifully built with the wood and sign. Anyway.
Yeah.
Which, it just ticked me
Boy,
off.
that's an education.
I wish I would have been there with the officer. Like, I want to be like, you have nothing better to do than to destroy these children's entrepreneurial spirit. Anyway.
Right. Right. But that's an excellent example, right?
Yeah.
You unleash the state and find things to do, right?
That's exactly it. My real point I was going to say was, my children's perspective on taxes. I like my kids made $90 on their lemonade stand just a month ago.
Yeah.
And I just told them, I said, and when you get older, you'd lose about 40, 45 of that. And they were like, what? Like, and I find that refreshing to see that being like, what's that like?
Right.
Crushing their child hopes and dreams.
For sure. But to see their genuine reaction to it, I'm going, I should be that way. I should have more of that.
Yeah.
Okay, so some people might consider this radical.
Yeah.
Your constitution.
Oh, sure. Is
there any working example in the world that is somewhat close to this that you can think of?
No, and that's for a good reason. Because
a true trailblazer.
In every society, there is an elite that wants to control things. Right? There is always an aristocracy of some kind.
Yep.
And even in those countries, and I'm thinking of the U.S., even in those countries that have liberty as one of their founding ideas, they don't mean liberty without a ruling elite.
Yeah.
They mean a ruling elite that's not pressing too hard down upon you. We're talking about actual freedom now. And here are the two bad choices. To be ruled by an elite or to be ruled by a mob. Right? The elite are courts, by the king, by the bureaucracy, by the experts, the technocracy. That's being ruled by an elite. They're setting policy. They're telling us what the proper thing to do is. They're telling us to wear a mask or to stay in your homes. To be ruled by the mob is to be ruled by the people. People think that the alternative to the elites is democracy. Democracy is dangerous. Democracy is ruled by the mob.
Yeah.
And the legislature, well, they become an elite as well, but in theory, they're supposed to be the mob. Right? So here's one suggestion that people sometimes make about a new constitution for a free country. We should rule by referendum. The people should have a plebiscite. Every time there's a major legislative proposal, it should be put to the people.
Yeah.
Okay? Bad idea. So let's just take an example. Let's say that during COVID, we had this system.
Oh, jeepers. Yeah.
So the powers that be proposed to lock us down in our homes and make us take a vaccine. And so we got to decide by plebiscite. All the people get to vote on whether or not you're going to be locked down and there's going to be vaccine mandates. Okay, well, what if 75% of the people, because of their fear, think, well, of course, lock us down and make us take the vaccine. Okay, well, if that's the way you're governing yourself, now you either have a vaccine or you're in prison.
Yeah.
Okay, that won't do. That's not a free country. What both of these alternatives stamp out is your individual autonomy to decide for yourself what you are going to do. And that means that the Constitution has to restrain those people who think they are the elites and the people from demanding that the majority will rule. The majority cannot be allowed to rule your own decisions. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you are not free. And the trick is to try and describe a governing system that carves out this space where your life belongs to you. And nobody can intrude upon it unless you are interfering with other people.
Some would argue that not taking your vaccine is. And that's where you saw the narrative kind of move that way.
Right.
Your vaccine protects me. The herd immunity stats started to disappear because we had achieved herd immunity.
Right.
And so you could see, and then we started seeing signs, your mask protects me.
Sure.
Because they were going, they thought this through.
That's right.
It's very interesting.
That's right.
So you're bringing, with this from what I'm read so far, you're bringing great clarity for the foundation of this.
Trying.
Obviously a very coherent vision of the foundational idea of a minimal state.
Correct.
Where the citizen is truly free, right?
Yes.
Avoiding the many forms of power the state can take. That's the idea.
Right.
But there's still areas to be worked out regarding the practicality of it.
Sure.
Right. That has to be fleshed out and worked out. And that was what you're saying is the exceptions that state has no power except.
Correct.
So throughout, we've only really touched on one point so far, number 5, right? And maybe we've touched on others. We haven't read them out yet.
Yep.
We'll still go longer. I still think it's worth going through a bit more of them. My brain is struggling, to be honest.
Sure. And you're not alone.
Yeah, I know that.
Because it's not what you're used to.
But I'll say it this way. Examples we've used, park,
Yes.
private, public.
Yep.
People do what they want. The idea of anarchy, right? You come more from a libertarian stance, right? And political viewpoint. I want to make sure I say this the right way. I find I'm really trying to find the right words, so I'm not insulting, and not to you. No, that's not.
No. Sure.
Let me put it this way: Jeremy, Tamara, and their family for a little bit. They moved in with us within the past year.
Yes.
It's going to sound horrible, everyone.
I'm excited.
No. This is actually it's complimentary to you guys. I actually don't I like people.
Yes.
But I don't like intertwining closely with a lot of people.
Course.
Sure.
Because they don't do life the way that Danielle and I have gotten used to. We like things the way we like them. We like things being clean. We like our space. We like, there's certain things we like. Jeremy Tamara moved in with us, and it was this is not a negative thing.
Of course I know.
It was a test of two families living in one space for an extended time of a couple months.
Right.
And we've got great love for each other, and it worked out actually pretty good. I can't think of many people where that would actually go well with. That I would not lose my mind after 2 days on people living in my own home and being that close quarters.
Sure.
So now I think broader to this idea of what we have legislated, what we have written out for almost code of conduct of how people should act.
Yes.
It scares me if they're, and maybe you can bring clarity to this with how much you want to flesh out the power of the state, because I don't like the idea of people doing what they want all the time, because it probably will be a stark contrast to how I would.
Can you give an example?
Exactly. Give us some examples.
Because I can't think of one. Because I've seen him kind of shuck and jive in an answer to a lot of the infinite.
Yeah, I can give tons of examples. Modern immigration problems that Canada has is bringing in very different cultures into Canada.
Yes.
And there's not, in my opinion, proper assimilation of, if they're coming to Canada, I want to be Canadian, which means I'm going to uphold the values of what it means to be Canadian.
Yep.
I'm going to respect property, respect people. I don't have a problem with other cultures, but I have a problem with some of the practices that some other cultures are bringing into our country. We've seen this throughout.
Right.
And this is maybe not a big, huge example, but most recently there's people from India that are photographed putting their floating statues of little gods or whatever they are in the river, which dilute into the river and they cause issues. And Rupa Subramanya has covered this a bit and say, leave those practices that pollute water, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want that to be, I don't want that and expand upon that in a huge way.
Right.
I don't like that. So I like some of the things. I hate COVID. I hate the managerial state. I hate all that kind of stuff. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
But at the same time, I can also see the good in, lack of a better word, dictating how we should generally conduct ourselves in public. For the most part, I think it's decent. How do we handle that?
All right. So this
in New Alberta,
the answer is maybe contained within this idea of the use of force, because I mean, it sounds like what you are prohibited from doing is, hitting your neighbor over the head with a stick or stealing his car.
Yeah.
And those two things are included.
Yeah.
But
of course.
But this idea is much bigger than that.
Okay.
Right? So you cannot, essentially it means you cannot impose things upon other people. So for example, let's say I want to buy your bicycle and you agree to sell it to me for $200. You say we make the contract and you say you can take the bike today, come back tomorrow, and you pay me $200. So I take the bike, and tomorrow I don't pay you. Like I said, you know what? Never mind. I'm not going to pay you. I've got your bike already. I don't need to pay you. Right? So I breached our contract.
Yeah.
Now, have I used force? It doesn't look like it. I didn't attack you. I didn't grab the bike. You gave it to me, but you gave it to me with your consent, and your consent was based upon our contract.
Yeah.
So essentially, your consent is now absent, which means I've taken your bike without consent. That's the use of force.
Okay.
All right. So that's not on. You can now sue me for breaching this general rule about the use of force because I took the bike without your consent.
Got it.
Okay. And so on and so forth for a whole lot of things. There's a lot of things that are now prohibited in our laws that are essentially a reflection of this central idea, which is no force. So if I'm carrying a ladder down the street carelessly and I bonk you on the head and cause you injury, well, I didn't mean to. It's still the use of force. I still hit you with the ladder. Okay. So there's going to be a lot of things that come within the scope of this rule that may satisfy you better. Let's talk about the things that are not prohibited, though.
Okay.
If someone is doing something on their own property alone or with other people who consent, let's put it this way. Let's say somebody's inside their own house. And just to make the example crystal clear, let's say even that the drapes are drawn and you can't see them. And they're inside with other adults who are of sound mind. And whatever they're doing in there, they've all consented to. Okay? Question. Is there anything that anybody else, including the state, has any business telling those people not to do? Anything. They're on their own. They're on their own property. Everybody consented. It doesn't affect anybody else. They're, let's say they're not online even. They're doing it alone on their own property. My take is that is nobody else's business. I don't care what they're doing. It might be something that I detest.
What if they're deciding to kill each other?
What if they're deciding to kill each other?
And they consent to killing each other all at the same time?
So be it. None of your business.
See, I would say...
Now, and that's assuming we're making a big assumption.
Yeah.
That what you say is actually true.
Yes.
That they actually.
I'm trying to go to the most extreme thing.
Of
I
course.
think that would be infringing
That's
upon.
where you got to start.
Yeah, right.
You got to start there.
Yeah.
But let's be careful not to take too much for granted. So we're going down the road of and quite properly, going down the road of assisted suicide. So should it be legal to kill other people
We're
when
covering
they
some
consent,
ground here.
right? But this is a good question
Yes,
because
it
people
is.
have a lot of trouble with this.
Yes.
And understandably, because because you can't reverse this. And once you kill somebody, they're dead.
Yeah.
And the idea of killing somebody who doesn't need to die is objectionable. It's very uncomfortable. But let's put it this way. So, okay, you go into a boxing ring. Okay? And the guy hits you. Can you complain? No. Why?
No.
Because you consented.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's say when he hits you, he really hurts you. He knocks you out. Can you complain? No. You consented. That's part of the thing you're doing.
Yes.
Okay. Let's say when he hits you, he kills you. Like you end up dying. Can you complain? No, you consented. Okay. Now, if that's okay, because you voluntarily took on the risk yourself, you said, this is something that I want to do. The ability to give consent is part of being free. So we have to extend that to death.
Well, because obviously there's complexities there. Is that let's pretend somebody in David's scenario where he said they're killing each other.
Yeah.
Assuming one of them lives through that and everybody else of that died.
Right.
You now have a murderer.
That person has a real problem.
Yes.
Because they're going to be charged with murder.
Yes.
And in order to get off from that charge, you have to prove consent, like actually prove consent.
Yes.
Like if somebody came in this new regime, if someone came to me and said, will you kill me? I would say, no way. No, I'm not doing that, because we have a rule. The rule says no force. And if you're not here around anymore, it's going to look like I killed you without your consent. I'm just not doing that. So in order for that to be okay, you've got to put in place, if you're the person doing the job, you got to put in place proof that is incontrovertible, that nobody can suggest it can't be fake. It's got to be clear, and that's one of the disincentives for why this is not going to happen very often.
Yeah.
So you have a group of adults who fully consent, drapes are drawn. I don't care what they're doing. I think for like 99.999%. They're playing Monopoly, great. They're going in there to have sex, whatever. They're going in there to beat each other to a pulp, go for it. They're going in there. And the murder thing makes me question, because there's this, and I know there's not a duty for us. We have a right to life, but there's not a duty to preserve life. But yet now I realize I'm drawing into the foundation that my faith plays in my role with people,
of course,
and also setting a precedent of, or maybe it does that set a precedent. But now another thing that just came to mind, if they're going to go in there, which happens all the time in our society, to do some sort of drugs together, whether it's illegal, right? And in that case, would the state want to interfere or not? Because
with the drugs,
no, but now I scale that on a large scale.
Yeah.
I can see that, because we talked about how the Constitution's written for moral people.
Right.
I agree. We're not a moral people.
Right.
But there are moral people.
Yes.
I don't know what the split is.
Right.
There's bad people, and that I can see expanding outside of their home into society. Right. So as soon as it goes outside of society, you're saying that's where the state steps in?
Well, so if someone goes onto your property and uses drugs, then you've got a complaint, because they're on your property. And on your property, you say no use of drugs. That's crystal clear. You're allowed to control what happens on your property. If they go onto their property and use drugs, none of your business. That's the answer.
But
what about the mass?
But it creeps to
production?
All the properties around me.
Well, if you have a property and all the properties around you are owned by people who are using drugs, that is the society that you live in. Those are the real people with whom you share the society. They are free. You are free. That is a reflection of the actual culture that you have.
And this goes back to the question of Canadians, what you're proposing, are going to have to answer. And have they actually done this thought process of fleshing out what does it really mean to be truly free?
But also we have a society in which people are not responsible because we have a state. There's a psychology about this. That the state will do what's necessary to keep us safe and to keep us behaving properly, and we can do whatever we can get away with, okay? That's not going to be the case here. You are responsible for yourself, literally. So if you decide to take drugs, which you will be allowed to do if you want to, which is a stupid idea, but you can do it if you want to, the consequences of all your decisions are yours and yours alone. So if that means that this is a bad call and you get into all kinds of trouble, the trouble is yours. And if you end up committing a crime, or if you end up without a job, or you have no place to live, that is your problem and your problem only. And so there's no safety net to catch you in a free society. In an actually free society, you get risk and reward. But risk, there's two sides to risk. So, on your own head. So you actually have built-in disincentives to be stupid. People will still be stupid, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to guess, and it's just a guess, but I'm going to guess it's be a lot less widespread than it is right now.
So I want to flesh it out. I have a question before we keep fleshing it out. This idea for Alberta Constitution.
Yeah.
Have you had any feedback from people who are pro-Alberta independence, separatism,
Yes.
U.S., whatever? Throw them all into the same. Just figuring out a new path forward from Canada.
Yeah.
Have you had feedback yet? Does this intimidate them? Does this mean, have some of them been like, wow, I did not realize what we're embarking on? Or do you think this will disincentivize some of them too?
Oh, interesting question.
Because it's more work than what they expected.
Well, I think I've had some really good feedback. Some people have said, "Oh, cool! Like, oh, okay, this is the real thing. Like, we're actually doing this. We're actually going to a place of actually being free. I mean, we're just not calling it freedom. We're going to actually do it.
Yeah.
It's good to sort of have it conceptualized about what it is that maybe we mean, or maybe we don't mean this. Maybe people are not realizing what it is that they're saying. Of course, there are also people who are trying to wrap their head around it. Like, okay, so a bit like you guys are doing right now.
Yeah.
Right? Like you can tell that they're really intrigued, but that there's some steps involved in bringing it all in.
My head's
right?
rifling through examples.
Yeah. Which is good. That's to be expected, because this is different.
Yeah.
It's a different kind of constitution, which, going back to my original point, in order
you have to.
In order to go where you have never gone, you have to do what you've never done. Mm-hmm. And to turn this ship around,
which I totally agree with, by the way.
Yeah. This is like your ship in the iceberg metaphor. You've got to be willing to navigate through different waters to actually get to the destination that you think you want to be at. Mm-hmm. And so this is dense.
Can I ask you a couple more examples?
Please. Yeah.
What about like speeding limits and school zones and parks and children?
Okay, let's start with schools first, because you bring it up.
Education. Yeah.
No public schools.
Private
schools only. You can do whatever you do. Yeah. You educate your children the way you think is right. Now, maybe that means sending them to a private school.
Yeah.
Maybe it means educating them at home. Maybe it means coming together with other families to educate them in a pod. I mean, the possibilities are infinite. Who knows? It'll be up to you and everybody
How about
else.
standards, worldwide standards to cross certain bars to go to other schools, eventually universities, and be recognized by corporations around the world or whatever?
They would create their own rules of thresholds, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But it has to be recognized by other spots.
But you will have, let's put it this way. If there is something that you need, and the need that you're expressing right now is a credential.
Yeah.
Okay. If credentialing is what you need, it will be provided to you by some entrepreneur that says they need credentialing. I'm going to set up a company or a business that provides you with credentialing that can be verified.
Just the same way as I have a job opening.
Yep.
It's your job to meet the threshold of what I require you as an employee to meet, and you're going to find whatever you need to get the job I'm opening. Is how I see it. Is you need this to work here at this channel. So you're going to go seek out where you can find that. And the free market would create the opportunity for that.
Yes. What we have to do is we have to regain the confidence, if we ever had it, regain the confidence that the world will provide what you need without the state doing it for you. We have substituted the state. We think the only way to survive is to have the state provide us with stuff like education. This is a myth.
Yeah.
I mean, we have to get rid of it and then see what happens. Allow people to figure out creatively, entrepreneurially, how to provide for our own needs in a way that is cooperative and competitive.
Yeah.
And those two words are not opposites, cooperative and competitive. Now, people sometimes say, look, this freedom thing, you're against cooperation. I mean, we are a species of groups. We like to group together, and you're suggesting that we have to be all, atomized individuals. We have to do things all by ourselves. That is not what it's saying at all. What it's saying is Group together, cooperate, compete, organize. Just don't be dictated to by the state. You do it voluntarily, not involuntarily. That's the only difference.
Yeah. So
back to your
yes,
schools.
I was going to say
Right.
speeding.
Right. So you're going to have maybe it's a private school. Let's say it's a private school.
Yep.
Okay. So question for you. Is the road a public road or is
no
the road
idea.
a private road? Okay. If it's a private road, then whoever owns the road will decide what the speed limit is. That's the simplest version.
And they can decide who goes down it.
They can decide who goes down it. You actually have a market in everything. Now, people are going to say, well, but that makes no sense because there's only one road out of here. So if the guy who owns the road won't let me through, how's it going to work? Well, the guy who owns the road won't own the whole road. And if that guy says no one can go over my road, then that guy can't go over the rest of the road. In other words, that's not the way it's going to be worked out.
There's going to be co-ops.
It's going to be co-ops. You're going to have contracts. You're going to have understandings and arrangements with other people who own other things so that the thing works. People are not going to act against their own interests. It is self-interest that is going to make this work.
So on that note, you also mentioned in number 9, only human beings are legal persons.
Yes.
So how do you have contracts and relationships between businesses, a business or commercial entity that builds roads or comes together and creates the co-ops between, like, how does that?
Right.
How do
So
you
let's
merge
back
that?
up a step.
Okay.
On this point. Here's one of the justifications you will hear for having a big state, because we need one to protect us against other powerful interests, like big corporations. We have a lot of big, powerful corporations, and we have other big, powerful entities. We have unions. We have political parties. And we have other kinds of entities that have corporate form. They have legal personality. They can own things. They can hire people. They hold capital. They can sue and be sued in the courtroom. Mm-hmm. Why don't we need a big, powerful state to protect us against these big, powerful entities? Well, there's an irony. And the irony is this. Those big, powerful entities are creations of the state. Corporations only exist because the state has created them.
What do you mean by created them?
They passed a statute that said, you go through these procedures and we'll create this thing called a corporation. You can control it, and it has these features. You can issue shares. You have limited liability. You can be sued.
So they created the framework in which a corporation exists.
They created the legal thing called a corporation. Now, you can choose to establish one or not.
Yeah.
But it is a state creation. Without the state, you cannot create a corporation.
Yeah, I get it.
The state has caused the problem that justifies the state's existence. So you get rid of the state, and then you get rid of all the things the state has created. Just imagine a world in which only human beings are legal persons. And by legal persons, I mean they have the status to be recognized in a court. Yeah. They are the ones who hold property. They are the ones who make contracts. Now, how's that going to work? The answer is, well, I don't know exactly. But we'll work it out because that's what we're going to have. You will make contracts with whoever you want to on whatever terms you wish, because you're a free person and so are they. You will figure out how to do this in another kind of world that is not dominated by state rules. Now, it's an understandable question because all of our significant things are done by big corporations. How are we going to develop oil sands without big, huge corporations? I don't know. But it will happen because there's a valuable resource there. And you have people who are free with resources to figure out how to exploit the good.
Well, it is essentially you're transferring the title from a corporation to an individual.
Yes.
But the individual could still become,
of course,
massive in terms of the amount of revenue flow and operation that comes with it. And he's got contracts with people that are working with him as.
You can still have employees. I mean, you can hire an employee or you can hire an independent contractor to work for you in the enterprise that you're involved in. You have the freedom of contract to do anything you want by contract. Anything you want by contract.
Yeah.
Right? The only thing you cannot do is make a contract with somebody else that is binding upon a third person. right? So let's say you and I get together and say we're gonna organize ourselves like a corporation. We're going to both invest in it. We're going to agree together that we're going to both have limited liability for the corporation. Okay, that's a good contract between you and me. But let's say our corporation does business with Jeremy. Okay, now Jeremy might agree to this arrangement by contract, but let's say he doesn't. Okay, our contract now is binding between you and me, but it's not binding upon Jeremy. So when we go to Jeremy and say, sorry, Jeremy, our corporation owes you a lot of money, but we have limited liability and the corporation's bust, so too bad. Well, no, because the corporation doesn't exist. It's you and me doing business with Jeremy, and he can insist that we pay him out of our resources because our contract is not binding upon him.
I'm interested on that, how that will play out, because you have huge risk.
Yes.
You personally, and what incentivizes a lot of businessmen and women.
But hold on. You're right. You're 100% right. But note the choice that we've made in the present scheme.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you limit liability, liability means you owe somebody something.
Yeah.
So we have chosen to set up a system where the investors in an enterprise will not be liable to people who have actually taken a loss.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a choice, but maybe it's not such a great choice. Why is that just? We do it because we think it incentivizes investment, and it does. But it also makes the environment much more risky than it ought to be for the other parties.
It changes the entire system of business and risk to the actual individual. Thus, it seems like a more ethical way of doing business.
Correct.
Yeah.
It means that you are responsible for the deals that you make, and you can't hide behind a corporate form to avoid liability that somebody else has lost.
Yeah.
You are good. I think when people who are pro Alberta, new Alberta, and they start going down this path, I think a lot of people are going to be like, what do we really want this to look like? They're at the very least going to, because this can be intimidating for a lot of people,
I understand.
especially when your whole world of comfort is built around things that the state provides for a large portion of your life.
But what part of what this is intending to do is call people's bluff. Like, all right, you want to be free. What do you mean?
I don't think people are capable. A lot of people are capable of truly being free. Like, can they actually fend for themselves on their own this much? You know what I mean?
Okay, but
yeah.
go ahead.
No.
You first.
I was going to say though, what do you mean by fend for yourselves? Like, it seems like these structures are still
the
existing,
amount of responsibility that comes on you personally,
and that's a fantastic society is what I see.
I'm not saying it's negative.
Yeah.
I'm just saying I don't have faith in humanity enough.
But
to
if
truly
they don't,
do
they won't survive in it, and they will either have to survive or move.
And Darwin's proven right.
But I go back to the extreme examples though of when you are alluding to the country we thought we had, when the Emergencies Act came, and I read the writing of the Emergencies Act, and do you remember? I don't know if you remember what I'm talking about. This is in Winnipeg in the thick of COVID, and the Emergencies Act was on the table. Sorry, the Wars Act, I think it was called. Was that?
Emergencies
talking
Act.
about Emergencies Act?
Yep.
It was on the table. Yeah,
Trudeau
same thing or something like that.
Yeah.
The old version is the War Measures Act.
Yes. And so I was reading through the wording of it, and essentially it gave them complete monopoly control on my house, my family, my children. If they deemed it, they could walk in and take my child away from me. Like, and I remember going,
That's how it's written. I haven't read it for a while.
I highlighted it, I wrote it, I posted on social media. I made a stink about it because I was going, are we nuts? And then I went, these are my children. That was the first time that I called family members saying, I'm thinking of going to Texas. Like, right there. That's where I was like, my kid. It scared the daylights out of me. And that's where I was like, what have we created here? And so there are ditches on other sides here, and I'm exposing the other ditch. But we have to find that middle ground.
Yeah. So here's the danger. So if you fall into the trap of thinking, in terms of what is good for society, and think, well, we'd be better off, doing this, having this kind of rule instead of that one.
Yeah.
Okay. That's an error, because that's not how it works. You don't get to decide that. The authorities decide that.
Yeah.
And the experience has shown, especially COVID, but not just, that the authorities have the power to make all kinds of rules that you don't approve of.
Yeah.
So what this is about is denying them the authority to do that.
Yeah.
And that means that you can't make the other rules that you would prefer either.
Yeah.
That means we can't make group rules. That means you have to go to this space where everybody is fending for themselves.
Would you say that the Amish examples is
Yes. Amish is great.
almost
The Amish
they're
example is
exploring
great.
this even right now?
Yes, but you see, what holds them together is their cultural coherence, their group coherence, the buy-in of the individuals, right? Now, it looks like, to some people from the outside, it might look coercive, like everybody who belongs to this group shall dress in this way and shun technology and so on. But any one of those people, if they wanted to, could say, you know what, not for me, I'm leaving, okay? It's voluntary.
Yeah.
You can have group cohesion. That's totally fine. It just has to be voluntary. You can't be made to stay with force.
Yeah.
Otherwise, be as coherent as you want. That's all.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Wow.
That's an interesting comparison.
My brain feels a little bit tired. Like, you know what I mean? You're wrestling with things you haven't wrestled with. You're questioning things that have been so secure in what we thought.
Well, there's still lots to wrestle with.
It really is. Yeah.
I want to move on to citizenship.
Okay. Right.
The way I read it,
Yes.
there's no immigration.
That's correct. Once you get rolling, there's no immigration.
So
There's no citizenship.
Well, there's immigration
Yeah.
in the sense that you can allow people in and they can reside
They
and
don't
they can
get-
live.
but to get citizenship. So
Correct.
10A, after adoption of this constitution, children born inside Alberta to at least one parent who is a citizen are citizens. I'm going to slightly cut out words.
Yep.
Children born outside of Alberta after adoption of this constitution to at least one parent who is a citizen at the time of the child's birth, granted citizenship upon application. So a slight difference.
Right.
There shall be no other path to becoming Alberta citizen after the adoption.
Correct.
B, laws and courts shall apply the same legal tests and standards to every citizen, with the exception of minors and the incapacitated. No laws or courts shall take account of the identity, background, race, lineage, culture, origin. So essentially, non-discriminatory. Is what you're saying.
Right. Correct.
Why?
A
Like,
or-
not why are we
A-
not discriminating? Why no other path to citizenship?
Oh, okay. So because it's not because that I wouldn't prefer a rule that said, well, we want these kinds of people and not these kinds of people. That, I would prefer that. But the point is, I'm not deciding that. The choice is to give the state the power to decide those things or not,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
And they have it right now, and what have they done?
Yeah.
They've opened the gates
Abused.
and flooded the country
Yeah.
too much, too fast.
Yeah.
If you give them the power, they'll do that again.
Yeah.
So you have to go the other way and say, sorry, this is one of the things we are not going to say that you can do. So therefore, we have to define it in the Constitution. And that seemed to me to be the most logical thing. Now,
Yeah.
this is what happens after the transition period. There's going to be a transition period, I would like to think, during which, as Alberta is ceasing to be a province and becoming an independent country, that will include this idea that if there are Canadians elsewhere in the country that want to be Albertan and not Canadian, then you can come and be an Albertan and become a citizen, and then you can join us in the new country, and then that will kick in. But once you've done that transition period, then that's the only way forward.
Interesting.
Yep.
Another little sub point you put for how corporations aren't. What was that?
Individuals.
We were just talking about it a couple minutes ago. I just totally dropped the thought.
Yeah, they're
remind me.
corporations are not legal persons.
Yes,
right.
But yet the state is.
Well,
so the state can be sued.
State,
and
so the state is doing these minimal functions that we are expressly laying out in the Constitution. In order to conduct those functions and to be sued when they do it wrong, they have to have legal personality.
Yeah.
So that's an exception to
Yep.
the general rule.
yeah,
We should probably wrap soon, but I wanted to talk about the term limits.
Yeah. Yes.
Term limits is a
Yes.
big thing.
Yeah. Big thing.
Huge.
Big,
And
big,
so
huge thing. Yeah.
I'll summarize it quickly, but essentially term limits on judges' positions, police officers, municipal, federal positions of
Right.
of whatever job they're holding there. And you had very specific ones. Like I think for judges, it was 6 years, if I remember.
It's 6 years for everybody except for police and military.
Which was 15 years.
15 years, yeah. Now, here's the rationale. We're describing a small state with not many powers.
Yeah.
But even so, you're going to have a class of people that want to control the state.
Yeah.
Right now, we have a professional ruling class that consists of career politicians and entrenched bureaucrats and tenured judges and technocrats all over the place. They control the state. They are the elite that rule over us. Okay? It's the military industrial complex. It's the deep state. It's the entrenched bureaucracy. And they expand the managerial state to suit themselves. They participate in pork barreling and regulatory capture and corruption of this kind and that kind, and so on and so forth. In other words, the project is to establish a minimal state and to not have a professional ruling class. So what's the best way to control a professional ruling class? It's not to have one. And how do you not have one? Well, you put in term limits. And I don't just mean term limits in the ordinary sense. For example, there's a term limit for the American president. He can run twice, rule for 8 years, and then he's out. Okay, it's a good precedent. But I'm talking a term limit of 6 years for people who serve the state over their lifetime, cumulatively, in whatever capacity. So, you run for office, you sit in the House for 2 terms of 3 years each. Okay, great. Thank you for your service. You're done. You cannot be a judge. You cannot be a bureaucrat. You cannot be an ambassador. 6 years total. If you want to spend 3 years doing this and 3 years doing that, great. We're trying to establish an amateur public service. An amateur public service. People who are not experienced, people who have no vested interest in the position that they hold, that they can't hold it very long. There's a continual, revolving door. You go in 6 years, then you're out. Like you're really out. You cannot participate anymore in what the state does.
Yeah.
Okay. That means we're going to have a whole lot more people involved in serving the state, and nobody's going to be able to establish a perch as their little kingdom, their little fiefdom in this department or in this courtroom. No. You're there for a little while, then you're gone, and somebody else comes in. We're going to combine that with 2 other things. Number one, when you are doing this 6 years thing, you will be paid the median Alberta wage.
Yeah,
Median Alberta wage. This is not a way to get rich, folks.
Yeah.
You do this for public service. If you don't want to do it for that reason, then don't do it.
We're going to find out how many public servants there really are.
They're going to disappear real quick.
That's what I'm getting at. And in the meantime, we'll also add that you're not allowed to be paid any of the kind of stuff. Like there's no pensions, no bonuses, no gifts. Like, come on. If you really want public service, this is for you. We'll pay you enough. It's a median wage. It's a good wage. It's enough to live on, but you're not going to get rich.
You're going to piss a lot of people off, man, with this type of thing.
But that says a lot.
It does say a lot. Okay, crazy thought I had. Well, if it plays out and if we could somehow see in the future this thing rolling out, I wonder what the results would be compared to amateur versus what was quote unquote, you call it professional. And the reason why I think this is typically people who move into those type of office spaces are ones that, again, kind of a broad statement, who have maybe made something of themselves. So they've got some sort of something that distinguishes them, whether they have expertise, they got a background, or unless you're like AOC, somehow you just got in there. But my point is, those people have shown a certain amount of education, a certain amount of drive. So those people naturally rise, quote unquote, to the top.
Yes.
You've got also a bunch of people in society that are deadbeats, that have no drive, that love to milk the system, that are dumb.
Yes.
No, I'm being serious. So your way, I'm just wondering what the mix is going to be like in terms of public servants, and will you actually get the best out of it that you want for your country versus, or
Okay.
are we going to get worse results than maybe the system that's already in place?
I have a question for you. What do you want the best people to be doing?
Great question.
A lot of things.
Like?
I want them to be doctors
Yes.
that can save lives.
Yes.
I want them to build buildings
Yes.
that won't fall on me.
Yes.
I want them to educate
Yes.
children because they're actually sound people and not corrupted.
Right.
You keep going through
Yes.
that.
Everything you've mentioned so far
Yeah.
is private sector.
Yes, I know.
You want the best people to be in the private
I would
sector.
also add one government role.
Okay.
Because we will obviously, as New Alberta, have relationships with other countries
Yes.
in terms of communication and trade
Yeah,
and
foreign affairs.
Sure.
geopolitics. I want the best, sharpest people as well representing our country.
Sure. Except that the scope of that activity is going to also be very much narrower than it is now, because there's not a lot that the government can do inside the country. Keep the peace, resolve disputes, protect the country from the outside. Now, you want somebody to be dealing with some kind of international, problem spot, conflict. Sure, you don't want to be going to war with people.
Yeah.
But there's not a lot of policy being made by this government because they don't have the authority to do it.
But then how do you work that out?
Well, how do you mean? Give me
Because
a problem.
we're going to need to trade with other countries,
Yes,
at least in the
yes.
transition period,
Sure.
unless we become fully
You're
autonomous.
going to want to trade with the country.
course,
This is not a closed border country.
So that still is a
Yeah.
role the government's going to hold.
Well, I suppose, but the question is, do you want the state to have the authority to govern the transactions that your own people are making with other people outside? And that's an open question. Are you going to want to be able to put tariffs on it or to restrict it? I mean, what kind of restrictions are we thinking about? I mean, maybe the answer is yes, but we need to set that out. And it's not.
I think it has to be yes, unless, like, who else is there?
Well, but what do you mean? So let's say the answer is no, just for a moment, hypothetically. Let's say the answer is no. Let's say we're assuming that the state doesn't interfere with transactions between Albertans and other customers elsewhere. Okay. What kind of scenario is going to be a problem? Maybe there are some.
You just opened my brain.
Right.
Use oil and gas.
Okay.
That's
oil and gas.
privatized because in New Alberta, it's not a government thing.
Right.
So you have the individual who's
Yes.
now negotiating.
Correct.
But when it comes to crossing border,
Yeah.
does there have to be involvement with our government in
But that's what
relation with
that's
others?
what I'm asking you.
Yeah.
Well, I'm asking that too.
Okay. Well, maybe on occasion, like I suppose you could imagine a scenario where there's some hostile entity out there who wants to buy oil and gas from a private Albertan citizen, and you don't want Alberta's resources to go to that entity. That's a possibility.
Yeah.
That would be part of securing your borders.
Yep.
So, okay, but you don't want, as a matter of course, the state to have the authority to govern all the transactions between Albertans and anybody on the outside. You don't want to invite the government to manage the economy. That's one of the things it cannot do, manage the economy. That's what we have right now,
Yeah.
a managed economy. And that
Yeah.
brings up another problem. Maybe you don't want to go over it right now, but we have a problem in Alberta in the transition from what they have now to what we're trying to get to, because over 60% of Alberta is owned by the Crown. Okay? That can't be in a
Yeah.
free country.
Yeah.
So you've got to figure out some way to move from that to a situation where Albertans themselves own the country.
Yeah.
Go back to land claims.
Well,
First come, first serve. You're
covers
gonna
it
have
pretty
everyone
well.
flock here.
Every citizen gets a small piece and divided, and then after death, it's divided again.
We'll have to flesh this out later.
Yeah.
But I also wonder, let's say it successfully gets to this type of constitution for New Alberta, how that is received by other countries around the world who's so used. This is an outlier. This
Sure.
is
Yeah.
this
Right.
doesn't make
For
sense to them. It doesn't equate. You've got long-standing relationships between career politicians and,
Yeah, no kidding.
and dictators and presidents and
This is what I mean by being a beacon in the dark.
Yeah.
I mean, the rest of the Western world is becoming, is unraveling. And you've got all kinds of people with vested interests and positions of power who will not put up with this kind of thing because it threatens them. Your point is well taken. But unless you start here and show that this is the way to do it. This works. I mean, I would imagine, and I'm just guessing, but I imagine that Albertans under this kind of system would be very wealthy and free. And, other people of other countries might, see what's going on.
Interesting. Trump did say today, I was reading on X a little bit earlier, he's in Europe now, and he is talking to the EU. I think he's talking to the EU, but just saying Western Europe, you are facing a crisis where you will no longer be who you are.
Right.
Because of uncontrolled immigration.
Correct.
And talk about something that you rely on the government to facilitate.
Is there anything you can think of in the present day that governments do well?
Take power. Sorry, it's a joke. Bad joke. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I think there's some things we've just gotten used to that they do that being privatized could do better. I think also the role of, you look in the past of the role of the church, who started actually taking care of the poor and the sick, and hospitals and education and all that, which was, I think, abdicated by them, and the government just took on social work.
But after the government has taken these things on, can you think of one of those things that it's executing well?
No, it's inefficient and it's bloated and it's wasteful.
So the answer is no.
That's the shortest way to put it.
Yeah.
So if the answer is no, then
what are we doing?
What are we doing?
Yeah.
We're caught in a vicious cycle.
I know.
Bruce, this is
this
an awesome thought experiment that I want to go for 8 hours on.
I know, me too.
Like, I actually do. There's so much more. We only touched on 2 or 3 points in this.
Right.
We'll have to talk about what we're going to do after this. But for those of you guys who have been watching, where can we'll make sure it's in the notes below.
Yes.
You can click on the link to go actually read through.
Yeah.
I'm going to challenge you to read through this. Read through the Constitution, because it's going to make your brain
It didn't take me that long.
tick.
I think it was
an hour read, right?
Yeah, I was going to say it's 45 minutes. I think it took me 2, and I was just wrestling through it, and it was very insightful. I highly encourage people to do it.
And just so they know, this is not just the text of the Constitution. It's actually a piece that describes each element.
Yes,
so
and the
that
whys.
Right, and the
Yeah,
whys.
it
Exactly.
sets it up in each one.
Yeah,
So
it does. Yeah.
it's a fantastic read.
It was.
I came on purpose not reading through a lot of it, because I wanted to just kind of get my authentic reaction on it.
Right.
Because I think a lot of the things I was asking you is kind of how my brain works on my own. I would have started working it out and thinking through it.
Right.
And I'm going to read through it again now. But you're right. The question is, do people really want to be free? And what do you mean by free?
Right. Right. Exactly.
And Alberta has to ask themselves that. And I'm kind of nervous on the results of people. I'm so curious about this. We got to figure out. Oh, we'll talk after. There's got to be more interaction we can have with people to get their feedback, especially in Alberta on this.
I know. I find the more I flesh it out, the better I feel about it. It comes down to, for example, I'll give you this, and maybe we'll leave it on this. I had a friend of mine who just had some heart issues and had a heart attack and had surgery and stuff, and he so happened to be in Alberta when it happened. And I just visited him in the hospital yesterday, and he said, "Thank God it happened here." And I told him why, and he gives me a bunch of reasons. And I grew up in Winnipeg in Manitoba, and the hospital system, it's not fantastic. It's not that much better here, but it is significantly better in Alberta than it is in Manitoba. It's rough in Manitoba, really rough. And one of the things you can do here is there's a lot of privatized things you can do as well. You can get CTs and CAT scans and MRIs and such all on private here, whereas Manitoba you cannot pretty much at all.
Yeah.
And so that was one of the conversations we had, where him and I were talking through the benefit of the private sector in supporting the health sector, and the way that you can buy your way to the front. And if you can do that, it also relieves pressure on the social system here. And so we're just kind of wrestling with that. And I kept going down that thought process and reading your things, going private sector. It's interesting. I find the more I flesh it out, it seems like the private sector would answer most of these questions, if not all. It's interesting. Bruce?
The socialists are going to love this.
Bruce, they're going to have an aneurysm when they go through this.
It is always a pleasure, man. You make us better. You make us think.
You do. I do appreciate it.
I like this is really good in terms of forcing people to analyze and think critically.
Yeah, it is.
It
really
challenges the comforts we have.
Good. That's the idea.
Yeah.
All right.
How much time have you were so thought out on every angle of this. How much time do you think you've collectively studied or thought on this?
Oh, this is over a period of time, so probably quite a lot.
Yeah.
This is a distilling down to the bare bones.
Yeah, you can see that. Yeah.
What if your life and your life's work was led to the moment of Alberta becoming a new country? What if that's truly your purpose?
That'd be very cool, wouldn't it?
What if that's your purpose? If you believe in
but we're all living in a really interesting moment, right? I mean, who knows what's going to come to pass from this point?
Exactly.
Right. I'm glad to be here to be able to witness.
Yeah. Well, you said it best. It's uncharted territory.
Right.
Yeah.
Gosh, how many questions come to mind now as well? We got to wrap. Thank you guys for watching. We're going to be revisiting this more and more. Let us know in the comments if there's any questions you had, things you thought were crazy, and then you change your mind once you heard us continually talking. Let us know. Keep interacting. Thank you for liking, subscribing, and being a part of the journey. Any last words?
No, I think I really want to hear people's disagreements and go in the comments there. So make sure you do that. Do it below. We'll get to them. I'd really love to. Bruce, thank you for your time.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right.
Fun.
Show goes on. See you next time.